Hello everyone, I am your host, Ahad Hussain, and welcome to Season 5 of Titan Alumni Talks, a weekly podcast where we talk to alumni about their experiences at Cal State Fullerton. For this week's episode, we have Andrew Nguyen, who is an administrative fellow at Kaiser Permanente, along with being the co-founder of the Association of Asian Healthcare Leaders. He graduated in 2018 with a bachelor's degree in kinesiology. Listen as we talk about his experiences in the fellowship program, along with being a President's Scholar. You can catch these episodes live at 10 p.m. on Wednesdays at titanradio.org, or you can watch all past episodes on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/CSUF alumni. You can also catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher Radio. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. It's an honor to have the opportunity to be part of this and share some of the things I've learned from Cal State Fullerton and beyond.
Perfect. So why don't we just start there, Cal State Fullerton. So you ended up going there in 2014 and graduated in 2018, and you decided to get your bachelor's in kinesiology. So where did that come from? Were you always someone who was interested in sports, or was this something out of the blue? So tell me about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like a lot of kinesiology majors are interested in sports. My first life was actually in sports, and I say my first life because there's a saying that if an athlete, you live two lives. Once when you're playing your sport, and then the second life starts when you finish playing the sport. And my second life started when I broke and dislocated my left arm and elbow in high school. So I played basketball growing up, and we had a basketball practice where we had a dunk contest on the monkey bars. And I being the young sophomore that really wanted to prove everyone that I could jump high, jumped on the monkey bars, caught the monkey bars, but then slipped, and then I fell on my left arm. So if you look at my arm, I have a scar, my radius and my ulna, broke both bones, dislocated my elbow, my arm looked like an S. Everyone on campus came out. They called an ambulance, had emergency surgery. I got taken to the hospital, had emergency surgery, and then spent 2 years in physical therapy. And when I was in physical therapy, I realized that I wanted to help athletes if I couldn't be one. So knowing that Cal State Fullerton was so close to home, had one of the world's or one of the nation's top kinesiology programs, and having the opportunity to attend Cal State Fullerton a full scholarship as a President's Scholar was an offer I couldn't refuse. So that's what really led me to attending Cal State Fullerton and majoring in kinesiology.
I see. So that's kind of an interesting start getting into it. It's not like a normal pathway that you kind of see. It kind of culminated from a series of events, unfortunate events, but I guess it kind of just led down that path. So you mentioned you were a President's Scholar. So for students who are not familiar with that, what is it and what does it entail being a President's Scholar?
Yeah, so I think the program might have changed since I was in it. One, because school is in a hybrid model, it might be in person and virtual, whereas we were in person. But it was and is a big honor to be a President's Scholar. President's Scholars are usually selected from high school based on their academic achievements, their volunteering experiences, and just overall merit. So I applied for the President's Scholar program when I was a senior in high school, had the chance to interview and be selected. And it's much more than just a scholarship. There are mentors that are provided to you. You have resources on campus that are designated just for President's Scholars. And then you get funding for your textbooks, you get a laptop that you can borrow. And most importantly, you have a network of other scholars in your cohort. We had about 12 to 15 in our cohort that really are your family throughout the college experience. So before you come to school, you already have a network of friends that become family and really make the experience rich. I got a chance to immerse myself in Cal State Fullerton and see perspectives from other scholars who were trailblazers in their own right, in their own majors and disciplines, and have some of that cross-pollination to see what things they learned, how they made the most of their time, and how that could help me in my journey. So being a President's Scholar gives you opportunities to work on campus, network, and learn from professors, priority registration. You get to pick who you want to learn from, and what class and what time you want to enroll in. So you get a lot of opportunities being a President's Scholar. But I think, when I look back, the thing I cherish the most are the friendships from the scholarship program. I'm actually meeting some of my friends next week from Cal State Fullerton's President Scholarship Program. So that, and then obviously access to the president of Cal State Fullerton. So overall, just a really good program that I think, needs some more attention.
And that's one thing that we love to stress a lot is finding that cohort of people that you can work with, that group of friends that will stick with you well beyond college, whether it's through the President's Scholar, the scholarship program, through like fraternities and sororities, through clubs on campus, or even sports, or even finding a job on campus. You do get to connect with a lot of students, and you get to foster those relationships well beyond college. So I understand that Cal State Fullerton is like notably like a commuter school. And did you commute when going to Cal State Fullerton, or did you live on campus?
I did both. So I lived on campus the first 2 years, but then my dad got sick, that was diagnosed with cancer. So I moved back home for the second 2 years. And I think that was really a good experience for me, getting some time away from home. I lived about 20, 30 minutes from campus, but then coming back home as a new person, having a newer ability to think for myself and to be more independent. I think it was a little bit of a struggle coming back home and adjusting to living with mom and dad. But it made me appreciate time with my family more because I I only spent time with my family before when I was living at home, and then going away it made me value the moments that we had together, especially during moments that were a little bit more challenging because of my dad's health conditions. But I think, even though Cal State Fullerton is a commuter school per se, it doesn't mean that you can't get the same experience that you would get attending other schools that might not be commuter schools. I think the President's Scholarship was really impactful in the sense that it wasn't just transactional, it was transformational. I got a chance to build those meaningful relationships. And, going to a commuter school, you have to be more intentional about that. So being involved in clubs, Greek life, intramural sports, whatever it may that may be, finding your niche, finding your tribe, and just a cohort of people that you share interests with and have goals that you're all similar goals that you're trying to achieve together helps build that bond and camaraderie. So I forget exactly what the original question was, but going to a commuter school was helpful for me because I got a chance to be with my family when they needed me, and also instilled greater intention in building community and immersing myself in the campus culture.
So you kind of got like a bit of best of both worlds,
Yeah.
albeit at like a difficult situation that did come up. Did you find it a little bit more difficult to stay connected to campus when you were having to commute, or was it like just as easy because you did already create that bond with the campus when you were living there for the first 2 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think at the beginning it was probably more difficult when I started commuting because I'd have to wake up a little bit earlier, beat traffic, find parking at Nutwood or Gamage. Thank goodness they're building a new parking structure. I see it when I drive by to work. But I think once I got my process figured out, getting in there early, going to the gym, and then going to class, then it just became routine. It was more so the adjustment. But I think just having some type of friend group already helped because I didn't have to start all over. It was just a little bit of a new process for me. Um, being able to get there early and then leave early if I needed to. If I wanted just space away from school, I could do that. When I was living on campus, I was living on campus. So I eventually had to come back to go to bed. But when I was commuting from home, I could spend a whole day on campus if I wanted to. I had a gastronome pass, so I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at school usually, and then just come home and study or just go to bed. But I had that flexibility or perceived flexibility because I probably had it when I was a freshman, sophomore. But that acceptance of what I had to go through, and my commuting schedule was probably the most challenging part. Accepting that my situation changed and that I had to commute was more of a mental barrier than a logistical one because I had a car and resources to do that. But it's just, I think, getting over some of the things that you're going through when you're going from a student living on campus to commuting might be one of the things to keep in mind.
And again, like you mentioned, it is a mental barrier, and there are some benefits to commuting. You do get that, like in your case, you had 1 hour a day where you had to get to campus and come back. For me personally, it's about an hour each way, so I have about 2 hours that are kind of free, and I have to like dedicate it to something, whether it's listening to a podcast or listening to an audiobook. I have to like set myself down to do those things. I can't kind of like waste time or talk to friends or kind of be a little lazy. And I know I was definitely in that boat when I was like when we were all doing online classes, and it was kind of living on campus because the campus was in my bedroom. I didn't have time to read books. I didn't have time, like a free time to think or do anything personal. But I guess like if you, as long as you use the commuting time valuable and you understand that you have to put more of an effort to stay connected to the campus, then I think you can have just as good of an experience as anyone else who's living on campus or living right across the street.
Yeah, and then the benefit is that you don't have to pay rent or pay
Yeah.
housing costs, right? Assuming that you don't have to pay your parents or family rent. But I agree, just having time to listen to podcasts, like learning, for those of you who are applying to grad school, listening to Word podcasts, you learn a word a day, you can helps you study for the GRE, and just having dedicated blocks that separate your day can be pretty peaceful. So I'm not sure what type of podcast you listen to, but I'm gonna help you plug in this one.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, if you are commuting, you can listen to Titan Alumni Talks. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're on YouTube. Anywhere you get your podcast, you can listen to us. And thank you, Andrew, for helping me plug that. But I normally I listen to enough of my podcast, like during editing and like reviewing it. So I don't want to listen to any more of it in the car. But normally I listen to some true crime, some conspiracy theories. Malcolm Gladwell has a good
Mm,
podcast as well. So, but it's
revision
all,
history?
yeah, revisionist
Was it?
history. Glad,
Yeah,
glad,
that's a good
glad you
one.
know of it. But it's very good, yeah. And then like audiobooks as well. Like you can get through a book a week or a book every 2 weeks, like based off of like my commute experience. And I don't know, I just can't do that at home. Like I don't think I can sit down at home for 2 hours a day reading. So I mean, like find something that works for you that also keeps you connected to campus. I feel like as long as you do both of those, then I feel like your entire college experience will be drastically different than if you kind of mind-numbingly listened just to music, went to school in the morning, and then just came right back right after class was done. You didn't stick to other TSU, you didn't stick to other like gastronome, like you mentioned, or other rec center. It's very easy to get stuck in that mind-numbing process of just going there and coming back when in reality there's a lot more that the campus has to offer. You just have to put in that effort.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there. Just effort. It's sometimes a greater effort for those that are further away and have to commute a longer distance. But the thing that makes Cal State Fullerton special is that it has variety and it has diversity of experiences. You mentioned earlier before we started the podcast, there are some people that are older coming back to school. We had military as a part of our veteran scholars program, which is housed in our president's scholarship, and they would have family and kids that they had obligations to, and they couldn't spend as much time on campus. So if you're in that group, or if you're in the traditional path, you have people that you share experiences with, regardless of how much time you have on campus if you put in the effort.
And again, like I mentioned about, or you mentioned about Cal State Fullerton, the diversity. When doing this podcast, we've had over 40 guests now, and it still feels like a new person that I'm interviewing. And I know there are definitely some campuses out there where it's cookie cutter students who come in, and it's like, oh, you guys all did the same thing, all are working in the same place, all majoring in the same thing. But with Cal State Fullerton, again, like you mentioned, there are veterans here, there are the adult reentry program, there are students from all different backgrounds, which I love. And it's just nice, finding, because then we are also very diverse, the new students who come in to talk to alum, and it's very nice having that group of people that we can connect to personally because we've had those same experiences and such a diverse experience. So can you tell me a little bit about the other stuff you did on campus aside from being a President Scholar? I know there are a ton of things that you've listed. So can you go through them and maybe just like list off the most notable ones, the most experience changing ones?
There's so much that I've forgotten, just reflecting and flashing back to what I was involved in. But President Scholars was the core component of my involvements, and it kind of extended from there. So within the scholarship program, I was a mentor for some of the younger incoming scholars, and that led me to also being a mentor for the Titan Dean's Academy in the kinesiology department. I had two mentees, one that was from the President Scholarship Program, and then one that wasn't. We actually encouraged him to switch majors when he was a Kinesis major, and he's a software engineer at I think north of Grumman in Colorado. He texted me, and that was 5 years ago. So having that mentorship experience really stuck with me, and I try to stay connected to all my mentees to this day. I also was involved with the um, kinesiology department's supplemental instruction program. So I taught or co-led sessions to help cultivate a greater understanding of exercise physiology and support the students that were in those bottleneck classes, which means classes that are more difficult to pass. Um, my claim to fame is that my students had the highest GPA or highest scores in like 20, 30 years. You have to double check me on that, but Dr. Coburn can give you the numbers. It wasn't me, it was the students. The students worked so hard and they attended the sessions, and it really motivated me to help create fun and engaging sessions. But I think having those experiences as a mentor, as a supplemental instructor, taught me how to, learn, but also taught me how to communicate more effectively and empathize, because I might have understood something, but then they might have interpreted it differently or understood it differently. So those two are some of my biggest involvements. I had a lot of other fun things like starting an intramural basketball team with the President's Scholarship Program and Honors Program. We called ourselves the Big Baller Scholars, and this was during a time when LeVar Ball and Lonzo Ball were pretty big. Um, so I got a lot of chances to be in fun sports and things like that, and then also had a chance to study abroad in Greece at the International Olympic Academy because of Dr. Glees and Dr. Llewellyn. So when I was a freshman going into my sophomore year, so a rising freshman, I had the opportunity to go to Greece with my President Scholars mentor, Tyler Seedentop, who might be a good person to interview for this next time around. But it was so cool to be part of the first cohort to go to Greece, to travel throughout the area, throughout the region, and then go to the historical sites. We were learning while we were there, and observing history in person. And going to Greece really gave me a deeper, a wider view of the world, because I hadn't traveled abroad before. And it deepened my critical consciousness, knowing that there's different types of culture, different types of food, ways of communicating, like people would blink, where we don't do that here in the US as much. And then just being, part of a bigger cohort again. I think we had about 20 people that went abroad to Greece. So yeah, those are just some of my involvements, but it wasn't really one thing that made my experience what it is, but more a combination of different experiences that really enriched my time when I was in college.
So it's kind of like we were talking about before, where you do have to put in that effort because
Yeah.
it's very simple to take your background, take your college experience, and just whittle it down to just going to those classes and coming back. But you didn't do that. You actually put in the effort to apply for the study abroad program, to work with your mentors, to mentee other people, to start that intramural basketball team. I love the name, by the way. It's a very good name. Um, but yeah, you do have to put in that effort, and like we mentioned before, and then you were also part of that cohort, right, that went to Greece. And I'm sure that many of you stick together and are still friends to this day because, like when you do travel in that small pack, it's kind of difficult to break you all apart. So working with those small groups of people is essential, basically.
Yeah, we have a 10-year reunion that I volunteered a while ago to plan. It's coming up, so I'm a little bit nervous. But even to this day, I meet with, or before COVID, I met with Dr. Glee, Dr. Lalone for lunch after I graduated, just to catch up and see how they're doing. So definitely some lifelong friendships that we formed when we went from the cohort that went to Greece.
Hmm. And then, so right after you graduated, you actually got your MBA or you started working on your MBA. So, where did this shift kind of come in from? Was this something you were always thinking about prior to graduation, or was this something that kind of was just spur of the moment?
Yeah, so I guess that's an interesting question because um, I've always been interested in business. My one of my uncles is a big, not big but successful businessman, and I always admired him and his journey. He rents out cars and equipment in Alaska, and I just always kind of wanted to be like him. But deeper than that was just a curiosity and wanting to understand how the world worked, because in school you learn about concepts and frameworks and things that pertain to the world. And the reason I majored in kinesiology because I wanted to understand how my body worked. But when I went to Cal State Fullerton and majored in kinesiology, I realized, like, okay, I understand how my body can function, but there are other concepts, there are business concepts in the world that I don't understand. When I worked as a physical therapy aide, I got to apply some of the things I learned in my kines classes, but then there was a gap between what I understood on the clinical side and then how we deliver and provide care through administrative functions, through business functions, and have a broader access and broader reach on people. So there was always something that was, I guess, germinating in terms of wanting to understand business and the world on a greater scale. And because of that, I went from working in physical therapy um, to healthcare administration, healthcare management. So because of Dr. Gleaves, I actually landed an internship at the UC Irvine Douglas Hospital in patient experience. And that was my first foray or entree into business and healthcare at the same time. I had a chance to work with patients, but also understand operations and digital health. And, I kept on going down that path, went from to there to working at IBM Watson in Washington, D.C. for an internship, again, with the help of Dr. Llewellyn and Dr. Cleaves, with the interviewing process. And then when I came back home, I realized that the work I was doing was pretty cutting edge. It was pretty fun. I worked on a proof of concept team um, to, to influence our team into committing to using the Watson supercomputer for understanding a lot of the or program it so it could read different things and reduce Medicare costs. And then when I came back, I kind of realized that I wasn't doing anything with this technology to impact my community, any things that I knew and understood that I could apply to those that might be marginalized and overlooked. So when I thought about my dad, my dad had cancer and I felt hopeless and helpless, and I couldn't do anything about it. My grandparents had passed away when I was in middle school and high school. So I spent much of my time in middle school and high school and college, at the hospital. So my research that I conducted during my senior year through the honors program was on access to healthcare for Vietnamese Americans. And then through my research, learned that Vietnamese Americans had some of the lowest access to healthcare out of all Asian American subgroups. And then the biggest population of Vietnamese people outside the country of Vietnam was in Orange County, California, where I was born, and went to college, grew up and went to college. So because of that, I looked at a lot of the hospital CEOs on LinkedIn and then saw that most of them or a lot of them went to Arizona State University for the MHA program or MBA program. And I cold emailed and cold called a lot of them. Throughout Southern California and Orange County, most people didn't respond, but some of that did went to ASU. So it just made sense to apply for ASU's MBA program. It didn't make sense to most people because most students have a few years of work experience, right? And then maybe 4 or 5 years of work experience. And I had essentially zero full-time work experience. I only had internships. But I felt I would regret not applying, especially since ASU was offering full tuition scholarships for all their students as part of a forward-focused program. It was kind of an experimental program. And the year that I was applying was the last year that they were offering the full scholarships to their students. So interviewed, applied, luckily got an interview, and then was fortunate enough to be selected as an emerging leader for their scholarship program, and got a chance to attend ASU, concentrate in healthcare management, and eventually follow in the footsteps of those that I reached out to and come back home to Orange County.
So you brought up a lot of great points, and I really like the fact that you were doing a lot of internships while going to college and while dealing with a lot of things that life tosses at you. Again, it wasn't just like a passive experience that you had. It was a lot of those active activities that you did, right? Reaching out to people, cold calling them, and then participating in those internships. And one thing I forgot to mention was you did some work on campus too. So, did the work that you do on campus differ in any way from sort of like the internships that you did off campus?
Yeah, my work was different, but it was connected. So when I started off in physical therapy, working as a physical therapy aide, it gave me insight into how to work in an office because I was doing some clerical things, but also some clinical things. And then that led me to the president's office at Cal State Fullerton. So I had the honor to work in our president's office with Dr. Mildred Garcia, who was the president at that time, and her staff, and also have a opportunity to feel what it was like in an executive office. People talk about executive presence and executive communications. I had no idea what that was before then, that you had to be succinct, which I sometimes struggle with because I like to talk a lot and hear my own voice. But there's a way of communicating and leading people and leading teams I was able to observe when I was at the president's office. And having the ability to answer phones, develop my professional communication skills helped me apply for internships, writing cover letters, writing resumes, having phone interviews. Most people, or at least I didn't know how to answer a phone professionally. People will call and you say hi, but then I learned how to say, hi, this is Andrew, right? So they know who you are. So small things like that, helped me incrementally grow and build my resume. And because I was at the president's office, that's how I was able to interview for the internship I had at the UC Irvine Douglas Hospital and patient experience. So that was administrative, but also clinical. So everything kind of built up upon each other. IBM kind of was, a place where I got lucky. Might not have had the exact qualifications for my job, my internship, but I don't think I've ever been qualified for any job that I've applied for. You just have to take your shot, because if you don't take it, then you'll never get what you want. So I've always been underage in terms of experience, underqualified. But I've always been the luckiest one. I had great mentors, great people that I've learned from, and great opportunities. So sometimes you just get lucky, and I just happen to be the luckiest person.
And going back to the internships that you worked on, I really liked how you had a goal with them. It's not that you just found whatever was available. You had a plan and you kind of just found what would work towards your goal and what was trying to culminate to your end goal, which is kind of nice. Instead of, I know college is very hectic and it's very easy to get lost in the idea of, oh, I just need an internship or I just need a job. But if you do set out that plan and you figure out what you're trying to attain and trying to reach out for, then finding those internships that lead you to that path, I guess it just makes it a bit easier and it just helps you understand what you're aiming for. And yeah, I guess you're just proof in the pudding, just based off of like what you've done. And now we're just going to kind of get into the job experience that happened after you finished up your work at ASU. So
Yeah, I just wanted to, for all the listeners that we have, I don't want to stress anyone out. It all makes sense now, but when I was going through it, it didn't make sense. I think I had to figure it out along the way. have a lot of conversations and informational interviews just to get an understanding of whether or not I was on the right path. You know, as you go through your college experience and you grow through your career, you develop a better ability to use language to position yourself for certain roles and talk yourself into jobs. So I don't want to make it seem like I knew what I was going to do the whole 4 years. I had a plan. I had to deviate from it. I had to make incremental pivots, and I'm lucky to where I'm at now. But I never knew that I'd be here. So just wanted to say that for anyone that might feel stressed listening to that story.
The great thing about Cal State Fullerton is don't try and make that cookie cutter experience, because we do come from like all different backgrounds. Life throws anything at us, and we all deal with it differently. So yeah, again, like you mentioned, let's not stress anyone out saying, "Hey, you have to do all of this." But it's a good idea to understand or at least follow and just see where it led to other people. And trying it out won't hurt, but don't stress yourself out trying to make it work if it's not meant for you, because not everything's meant for everyone. Everyone has their own path, like we mentioned before.
Yeah, what's meant to be will be.
So now what you're doing, you're an administrative fellow. It's kind of like a long title for Kaiser Permanente. It's a postgraduate fellowship. So what does that kind of entail? What is the job of someone who is in a fellowship program?
Yeah, so the fellowship is a really unique experience, especially in a time where we're facing a lot of challenges with COVID. Administrative fellowship with Kaiser Permanente is a 2-year rotational experience. So within those 2 years, I have 3 8-month rotations where I work closely with a lot of Kaiser Permanente's executive leaders. So, for instance, in my first rotation, I had the chance to work on the Kaiser Foundation Hospitals and Health Plan side in Orange County, with the senior vice president of the Orange County service area, which is basically the CEO of Orange County's hospital and health plan. So with that rotation, I worked with a few departments, namely the finance department with the budget, the operations environmental services team, where we developed a dashboard to help patient throughput, which was important during COVID because there was a surge, there was many surges, and a lot of patients waiting to get a bed. So we wanted to create something that would allow us to measure, track, and improve the throughput of patients that are admitted and then are discharged from the hospital. And then my third main project that that was in virtual care, implementing some virtual care capabilities in our ambulatory settings, such as podiatry and vascular surgery. So that was my first rotation. I got a chance to learn more about healthcare operations, get a wider breadth and depth into certain project work, and then rotated out of Orange County to Pasadena, where I'm currently working with our regional chief of quality and systems of care for our medical group side. So working on a few different teams. One team working with is a special projects team to spread regionally a cancer care program, which is something I wish that we had when my dad was sick, in a different system. But really meaningful work, really foundational experiences that have allowed me to learn more about healthcare as a system, and do some meaningful things that I find fulfilling. So it's more so, I guess, for people that aren't familiar with fellowships, a leadership development program, and focused in healthcare operations and strategy.
So what kind of led you to this role? How is this something that you just kind of find like on Indeed or like on a job search? Or is this something that you kind of knew beforehand that you wanted to get into?
Yeah, so this was something I was aiming for when I was a junior in college. So working at the UC Irvine Medical Center, um, I saw that a lot of the administrators had a MHA or MBA or MPH, and then some of them went through fellowship programs, and the fellowship programs gave them a lot of exposure to executive leaders and gave them opportunity to work on high visibility, high impact projects. So they were able to build their resume, build those networks, and get great experience that allowed them to lead in certain functions at the hospital. So Because of my background, with my kinesiology experiences, I wanted to be involved in healthcare in some way. And I also wanted to have more managerial and leadership opportunities. So I thought that the fellowship would be the way to go. I wasn't really looking at it before I worked at the hospital, but because I was there, I realized that it was something that required me to go to graduate school. So kind of reverse engineered, probably put too many eggs in one basket because I was just really focused on one thing. But really lucky that it turned out to be with KP and that I get to be back home working with our leaders. I don't think it's a hit or miss. With the fellowship, if you work in a job right after college or grad school, you get to learn your job and your function and get to be an expert at that. But as a fellow, you get to have a wider grasp on operations, a wider understanding of the company. And for me, that just seemed to make more sense for my growth and my desired pathway.
So you mentioned that you would need to be in a graduate program or finish a graduate program to get into a fellowship like this. Does it specifically matter what your degree is in or what your undergrad was in to get into this? So let's say someone who is finishing up their college experience right now, sort of like you were, but they're not in like a healthcare field but want to get in one. Is it still like possible for them to migrate into this, or how does this like experience kind of work?
Yeah, I don't think a healthcare major in undergrad is necessary, but a graduate program focusing on healthcare would be beneficial. So if you're in a master's of healthcare administration, which is the MHA, most MHAs do apply for fellowships historically. MPHs are broader. They aren't just focused on hospitals, they focus on public health, hence MPH. And the MBAs kind of have different focuses. My concentration was in healthcare management, or my emphasis was in healthcare management. So I could have chose to do something else, but I was on this track. I had this interest, and that's why I applied for the fellowship. But to your point, you don't need to have a certain undergrad to apply for a healthcare graduate program. I was a healthcare undergrad that went to business school. There are people that major in philosophy that go to medical school. So it just is about shaping, you're getting experiences related to those programs, related to the career that you want that allow you to, make the transition or make the move to a role that you're looking for. So everyone has their own path. I don't know if I said that so many times, you just gotta make the most with the cards you're dealt and be active, reaching out to people that can connect you, that can give you your first shot, first opportunity. I think that's what's most important, just that first step in reaching out to someone that can give you an opportunity in the field that you want to be involved in.
And we'll plug something that we do have for Titan alum near the end of the podcast. So students stick around to find out ways where you can talk to alumni and understand those experiences. But yeah, I guess so if you are a student in undergrads, then it's not too late. Who knows? Maybe I'll change from computer science and trying to
Yeah.
get into a graduate program for healthcare. But it's
Funny.
great to
Red
know that
flags.
there are like multiple. It's not just like you have to get into, because in college, right, you start off 17 going into 18, and with it you don't necessarily know what you do want to choose, and you don't want to keep backtracking into different majors. So it's nice to know that it isn't just like you only have one opportunity to get into something like this, a fellowship program. You have enough time to sort of tailor your experience, like you said, to slowly get transition or get into that if you're not already in a background of healthcare.
Yeah, and I think to your point, two worst things in life are getting what you want and not getting what you want. You might want something at 17 and realize at 22, 21 that you don't want this type of career, and that's okay. You might get into the career you love and realize that you don't love it anymore, and that's okay too. So everyone has their own path, everyone has their own timeline.
And then there's some other work that you're doing, more of like self-employment rather than working for a company. So I guess wherever you want to start off with that, go ahead and just tell us what you do with it.
Yeah, I think my main focus has been on healthcare, and I try to be involved with companies that shape the future of healthcare. Um, And one of the ways that I try to shape the future of healthcare is to have more representation for communities that might not be equitably represented. So for instance, with the Asian American community, there's such a big variety, and um, so many Asian American Pacific Islanders are involved in healthcare in the clinical space. They're probably over indexed. I don't have the exact numbers, but many become physicians, nurses, LVNs, mid-level providers. But that being said, a lot of them are not in managerial roles, management or leadership roles. You don't see that many AAPI people in executive leadership. So, you know, there's something that's missing there. And what is missing? Is it that we don't see them? Is it because we don't advocate for ourselves, or is it something else? And that's something I wanted to find out and to learn more about. So when I was in grad school, Jennifer Ho, who's a fellow right now at Johns Hopkins, and it's interesting enough, my cousin's cousin, and we had no idea. She lives in Texas, and I had no idea until she called me. Wanted to meet other Asian American healthcare, aspiring Asian American healthcare leaders in the U.S. because there aren't that many of us. I thought I was the only Vietnamese person in healthcare admin until she reached out. So we had a discussion about wanting to form some type of network and just some type of group where we could share what we've learned, share our experiences, because there weren't many spaces for us to share and discuss and debrief things that we've gone through, in our community as healthcare professionals, emerging healthcare professionals in our communities. So it really just started off with a conversation with Jennifer, and then I got linked to a current fellow at Emory, named Eddie Lai, and then we added on Elisa Na, who's a fellow at Mayo Clinic, and the four of us are part of the AHL board, but just really have been trying to connect with other Asian American Pacific Islanders by hosting webinars where we invite API executives across the nation, where we're trying to have more professional development by sharing resources and tips on how to apply for fellowships, how to apply for graduate schools, and just sharing some of our learnings so that those that come after us are able to avoid some of the mistakes and the challenges that we had to endure, and then they could pass it on too. And as a result, we can have greater equitable representation in leadership, who are able to create policies, lead operations, and develop strategies that are more inclusive, that don't just focus on one type of demographic. Strategies that are effective in touching, impacting people from all backgrounds and all walks of life, so that we can have equitable health outcomes. So that is really the end goal, more so to improve the health of those that are marginalized and overlooked. It just so happens that the vehicle that I'm doing that through is with Jennifer, Elisa, and Eddie through AAHL. So started off as something really unofficial, but have getting fortunate to get national attention and potentially more potentially funding for more established healthcare organizations in the U.S.
I see. So I kind of like how you're not taking sort of like a traditional pathway only and just like maybe pursuing the fellowship and just kind of sticking with it there, but also working on making the changes on your own instead of sort of relying on the system to fix itself or even itself out. Because we do need people who understand that there is a problem or there's unequitable resources, and we need people to fix that instead of just sort of relying on again, like society or politicians to eventually fix those problems. So I guess starting your own like foundation or starting your own like grassroots program is the way to go.
Yeah, we figured that leveraging technology would be the best and most effective way to reach people, similar to what we're doing with the podcast. If it was just you and me in person, it'd be an awesome one-on-one conversation. But now we can have this conversation with a greater audience and hopefully inspire influence and affect more people. And that's the same approach we're taking with LinkedIn, with AHL. If it's just four of us in a group text, we can only, communicate with four of us. But then if we have a shared platform with over 950 members across the nation, then it allows us to have better reach and just more inclusive programs.
It's time to ask him these quickfire questions. The first one being coffee
Ready?
versus tea.
Oh, tea, green tea, jasmine tea, matcha tea, all day.
So are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird,
Do you prefer dogs or cats?
dogs,
iOS or Android?
iOS. I don't think I had an Android ever.
Online shopping or shopping in a store?
It used to be in the store, but now online shopping because of COVID.
So do you prefer winter or summer?
Oh, summer.
So yeah, let's get into a bit of advice that you now have for students. So I would say my first thing is for students going into healthcare or wanting to get into the healthcare field. I know like there's a lot of stigma around people needing to be doctors, and that's where the healthcare field lies. But obviously that's not possible for everyone. So what advice do you kind of have for like students in healthcare and about like the kinesiology major specifically?
It's about finding something that gives you meaning and fulfillment, where you can grow and make the biggest impact. So if that's, being a physical therapist and then owning your own physical therapy clinic, you don't have to be a doctor. It just depends on how you want to leave your fingerprint on the world. It's okay to have an idea and a plan, to be a doctor, and then maybe realize that it's not for you. I don't want to say quitting is okay, but there's a reason people pivot, right? Because they find something that's better fit for them. And I think having the self-awareness to pivot when necessary, to understand, what is the right pathway at the, in that current stage of your life, while also having a long-term time horizon of what you want to do is crucial. And you get a chance to do that when you're in college, in undergrad, especially at Cal State Fullerton with some excellent professors. You don't have to make the mistakes that other people have made, the mistakes that I have made. If you just take the time to get to know your professors, seek their insights and perspectives, because you can learn from what other people have learned. You don't have to learn everything on through firsthand experience. So that's what I would say. If you want to, be a hospital CEO, meet a hospital CEO. Don't be afraid to make that cold call, that cold email, because you can always dream about what you want to be, but then you never really hear about the trials and tribulations, and the lack of glamour that might come with, a high intensity job. Maybe you love it, maybe you're an adrenaline junkie, but you'll never know until you actually observe or shadow someone that's in the shoes of the role that you want to pursue.
And I really like the phrasing that you put. It's not necessarily quitting, it's more of a pivot.
Yeah, it's not time wasted, it's just time invested. And maybe there wasn't an immediate return on your investment, but you still learn, you still grow, and then you know what you don't want to do. So, okay to pivot.
So what advice do you have for like students in general? I know you mentioned before, like during the break, that you wanted to hammer down some points on life experiences. So would you like to touch on that?
Yeah, I think, something we talked about during the break was just how some of the most transformative experiences were outside of the classroom. It was more of the experiential learning how to work with others, learn how to work on teams, and building relationships that are really applicable to working. So, you can learn a lot of things in the classroom, but you have to be able to apply it. Um, Especially in kinesiology or clinical fields, we're working with people. It's not just the science, but it's the art of communication, art of effectively communicating to make sure that your patients, your members, people you engage with, actually follow through and have positive results from the things that you're passing on. So, whether that's surfing, taking an entrepreneurship class, participating in a sales competition, things that I've done, helped me outside of the classroom just become a more well-rounded person. And as you're going through this journey as an undergrad, you're going to realize that there are things that you want to learn, things that you need to learn. So being able to prioritize the wants versus needs, and as you're working with other people, you're also going to realize that there are different thoughts and different perspectives, and you might not always be right. I was very black and white before, and now I think I'm a little more gray. But be able to see and understand how others view the world, because that will help shape some of your decisions and your thoughts, and that ultimately, affect your college experience. So, spend time around those people that are positive. You have, what is it saying, like 5 people that influence you the most. So if you go to a commuter school like Cal State Fullerton, you might find a lot of people that come and go, but find the people that will stay, not just on campus, but stay in your life, because that's what really allows you to go far in life, having some type of network and support system. And I think, I'm here, looking back on my time, and I wouldn't be I wouldn't have had the internship experiences. I wouldn't have had the administrative fellowship or any of the things I've gone through without my support system from the President's Scholarship Program, without my professors and my mentors. So definitely is a team sport, not just an individual one.
So I had a question about your ideas on success. Like, what do you feel is successful to you? When do you feel that you've achieved the idea of success? And has it changed from, let's say, your time at undergrad till now?
Yeah, it has. I used to think success was getting all A's in my classes. And then I went to grad school, I thought success was getting a certain role, a certain job. And I think for those periods of life, it was right. But now I'm thinking, learning that success is progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Some of the ideals I have are focused on equity in healthcare, on increased representation and greater health care outcomes for patients. And as long as I'm working towards that, as long as I'm growing, um, and growing in a way that isn't hurting others, then I feel like I'm being successful. We have things that give us value in our lives. So whether that's our family, whether that's our friends, or some type of hobby or extracurricular activity, as long as I'm filling those buckets, then I feel like I'm growing, I'm being successful. Um, I have, different hobbies and different things that, are fun to me, but they might not give me the most. So I'm doubling down on things that are the highest value adders and time multipliers in my day. And I think it's okay if your definition of success changes, because, um, as long as you are going forward and having progress, I feel like that is always successful. So um, I wouldn't say it's about the accolades and accomplishments. I think probably for me at one point it was. Um, but right now it's just about being with my family, making impact on the community that I grew up in, community that, the communities that we serve at Kaiser Permanente, and also having the opportunity to give back. That's the most rewarding, because if you have something valuable and you're able to give back, then you kind of cement those learnings and those experiences. And I'm excited to have that chance to do that today. Fortunate to be able to, still remain connected to the President's Scholars, part of the President's Scholars Alumni Association. We have events and meetings where we talk about and work with the current scholars. So just all those things have allowed me to, at this point, live a fun and fulfilled life. I'm sure the success will change, in the future. If I have a kid or something, it's about raising a healthy child, finding a significant other, those things. But right now, I feel like just doing my best work, growing and learning how to be more present in my day-to-day life has been probably the thing I'm just trying to grow the most, just to be focused on the moment instead of wondering about what has happened or what will happen in the future.
So success, we should understand that it is like an ongoing, ever-changing experience that, it depends on what you need to do, what's happening in your life and with your current circumstances. So that's a good
Yeah.
point to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, I got what I wanted. I got my 4.0. I got the scholarship, and it mattered then. Maybe, the financial implications of the scholarship will last longer than just 4 years, but we think that success and these things will make us happy later on. That we'll never be here. We're always just one decision from creating a life that we love. So everyone, if you're not loving how life is right now, if there's something that you're trying to achieve, something you're trying to overcome, you're just one decision away. 1% a day of improvement leads to 37 times of improvement in a year. So just one good step a day, I think makes a big difference.
So, one last question to end it off is if there was anything you can do differently at university, what would it be, if there is anything?
The one thing that I wish I could have done differently was start working out earlier, because I don't think I started really getting into it until my sophomore year. I played basketball growing up and we worked out, but it wasn't my own routine. I wish I it's such a bro answer, but I wish I had a better workout routine and started working out, taking my physical and mental health more seriously my freshman year. I think I had to realize until my dad got sick, my sophomore year, that our health is really important, and we have to maintain it every day. So yeah, that's hard to give you a bro answer, but I wish my workout routine and everything was better, and taken more seriously when I first started college.
No, that bro answer is completely fine. And
Yeah.
that reminded me of one thing. If the program that we have is a website called Titan Pro Network, what it is it's basically our own site that is similar to LinkedIn in the sense that you can connect with people, and this is for students, alum, faculty, and staff. You can connect to anyone from Cal State Fullerton if they're signed up, and it's very simple because as a student that the alum wants to connect with you because they are signed up. It's not cold calling anymore because they do want to speak with you. And you can find alum of all different backgrounds and other students, faculty, and staff. And you can ask those questions. You can find those people to shadow or have as your mentor, which I really love about it. And we found so many people for the podcast through Titan Pro Network because we know they're willing to speak and give those advice and tidbits to students. So Andrew, if you can sign up for it, that would be greatly appreciated as well. It's very simple to do since you can just sign up with your LinkedIn account. And yeah, if anyone wants to talk to Andrew, he's available on there. And that's just a great way that I have found, and I know a ton of students have found to connect with alum and other students.
Yeah, awesome. I've signed up for it. I signed up for it a few years ago. I think it's the same thing we're talking about. I haven't got anyone that reached out to me recently, but since it's connected through LinkedIn, you're more than welcome to reach out to me through LinkedIn too. I'm an active surfer, avid hiker, love being involved. If anyone wants to lift, if you can swipe me into the TSU, that'd be greatly appreciated. Play basketball or something. So trying to be involved more so with the campus community.
So again, Andrew, thank you so much for giving the bits of advice that you did today and letting people know about what you currently do in your time at Cal State Fullerton.
So it's an honor for me to be here. Excited to hear how this sounds. Thank you everyone for listening, and looking forward to seeing everyone in the future when things come back into person.